A deep metallic roar rolled across the desert sky just before dawn. Radar screens flickered inside command centers across central Iran, as streaks of heat signatures cut through the darkness at extraordinary speed. Within seconds, the quiet desert horizon erupted with flashes of light as explosions rippled across one of the most heavily fortified nuclear complexes in the country. Columns of dust and debris climbed into the pale morning air, while emergency sirens began to wail across nearby towns. Satellite imagery later captured the aftermath. Long scorch marks cutting across reinforced concrete structures, smoke drifting above underground tunnel entrances, and security vehicles racing through the perimeter roads surrounding the massive installation. The target, according to early regional reports, was Iran's largest nuclear enrichment facility, a site long watched by international inspectors and intelligence agencies alike. For years, it had stood at the center of global tensions surrounding Iran's nuclear program. A sprawling network of laboratories, centrifuge holes, and fortified underground chambers buried deep beneath layers of rock and reinforced concrete. Within minutes of the strike, state broadcasters interrupted programming. Military officials convened emergency briefings. Analysts around the world began scrambling to understand what had just occurred, because this was not simply a military strike. It was a direct challenge to the strategic core of Iran's nuclear infrastructure. According to U.S. defense officials, speaking to multiple American media outlets, the operation involved a coordinated missile strike targeting key facilities linked to Iran's uranium enrichment network. The attack reportedly deployed approximately 50 precision-guided cruise missiles, launched from a combination of naval vessels and long-range strike platforms operating outside Iranian airspace. U.S. military spokesmen stated that the targets were carefully selected components of Iran's nuclear fuel cycle infrastructure, specifically facilities believed to house advanced centrifuge arrays used to enrich uranium to higher purity levels. These centrifuges, according to Western intelligence assessments, play a central role in the process that can potentially produce weapons-grade nuclear material. Officials emphasized that the strike was designed to degrade, not permanently destroy, Iran's nuclear capability. According to the Pentagon briefing, the objective was to set back enrichment progress by damaging sensitive equipment, power supply networks, and supporting infrastructure within the complex. American officials also described the operation as a calculated response to mounting intelligence, indicating that Iran had accelerated enrichment activities in recent months. According to U.S. intelligence sources cited in multiple reports, uranium enrichment levels had reportedly moved closer to thresholds associated with nuclear weapons development. Strategically, officials suggested the message behind the strike was unmistakable. The United States was prepared to act militarily if diplomatic pressure failed to slow Iran's nuclear expansion. Pentagon spokesman also emphasized that the strike focused exclusively on nuclear infrastructure, avoiding civilian areas and broader military installations. But the story quickly became far more complicated. Before we break down how this strike could reshape the balance of power across the Middle East, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the latest dramatic developments shaping global geopolitics. According to Iranian state media, the situation on the ground looks very different from the American account. Iranian officials quickly moved to downplay the impact of the strike, stating that most of the incoming missiles were intercepted by the country's layered air defense systems before reaching their intended targets. Iran's defense ministry claimed that radar networks detected the incoming weapons early enough to activate several defensive systems positioned around the nuclear complex. These include mobile surface-to-air missile batteries and radar-guided interceptors designed to engage incoming cruise missiles traveling at low altitude. In plain terms, these defensive systems function by tracking the incoming missile with ground-based radar and launching interceptor rockets that collide with or explode near the incoming weapon. If successful, the incoming missile is destroyed before reaching the target. Iranian authorities also stated that the most sensitive enrichment facilities are located deep underground, within reinforced chambers designed specifically to withstand aerial attack. According to officials in Tehran, these underground halls, protected by hundreds of feet of rock and concrete, remained operational following the strike. State television broadcast footage showing intact exterior structures and emergency crews moving calmly through the facility's perimeter zones. Iranian officials further accused the United States of escalating tensions in violation of international agreements governing nuclear oversight and regional security. Between these narratives lies a complex reality that analysts are still working to understand. What does this particular site represent in strategic terms? The answer is simple. It sits at the heart of Iran's nuclear capability. The facility reportedly targeted in the strike is believed to be the Natanz nuclear complex, one of the largest uranium enrichment installations in the Middle East. For more than 2 decades, Natanz has served as the primary hub for Iran's uranium centrifuge program. Inside the sprawling complex are vast halls filled with thousands of high-speed centrifuges, tall cylindrical machines that spin uranium gas at extraordinary velocities in order to separate isotopes. The process gradually increases the concentration of uranium-235, the isotope required for nuclear reactor fuel, and, at much higher levels, nuclear weapons. In technical terms, enrichment is a gradual process. Low-level enrichment produces fuel for civilian nuclear reactors. But as enrichment levels increase, the same infrastructure can potentially produce weapons-grade material. This is why facilities like Natanz sit at the center of global nuclear diplomacy. International inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency have long monitored the site, verifying enrichment levels and attempting to ensure compliance with nuclear agreements. But intelligence assessments in recent years suggested that Iran had installed newer generations of faster, more efficient centrifuges, capable of accelerating the enrichment process dramatically. Attacking such a facility carries enormous strategic implications. It is not merely an industrial complex, it is a technological engine powering the country's nuclear ambitions. The message was clear. Nuclear escalation will meet direct military response. The immediate military consequences were felt across the region within hours of the strike. According to defense officials, U.S. naval forces in the Persian Gulf moved into heightened alert status, while additional surveillance aircraft began patrolling the airspace around the Strait of Hormuz. Regional missile defense systems were activated across several allied countries, hosting American military bases. Command centers in Qatar, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates reportedly raised readiness levels in anticipation of possible retaliation. That military alert triggered immediate responses from governments across the Middle East. Saudi Arabia issued a statement calling for restraint while quietly increasing air defense patrols around critical oil infrastructure. The United Arab Emirates urged diplomatic dialogue, but also confirmed that its National Security Council had convened an emergency meeting to review regional security conditions. Global markets reacted quickly as well. Within hours of the first reports, oil prices jumped sharply in early trading sessions. Brent crude futures surged by nearly 6% as traders began pricing in the possibility of supply disruptions in the Persian Gulf. Shipping insurance costs for tankers operating near the Strait of Hormuz also began climbing rapidly. That narrow waterway carries nearly 20% of the world's oil supply. That spike in energy prices has consequences far beyond the region. Fuel prices rise, transportation costs climb, manufacturing expenses surge. Financial markets soon reflected those concerns as energy stocks climbed, while airline and shipping companies faced immediate pressure. Diplomatic channels then activated at full speed. Officials at the United Nations called for emergency consultations among Security Council members. European governments urged both Washington and Tehran to avoid further escalation, warning that additional military exchanges could destabilize the already fragile regional security environment. Meanwhile, the political response inside the United States unfolded rapidly. Several members of Congress demanded detailed briefings from the Pentagon regarding the scope and authorization of the strike. Supporters argued the action demonstrated firm resolve against nuclear proliferation. Critics warned that direct military attacks on Iranian nuclear infrastructure could trigger a dangerous cycle of retaliation. Each reaction added another layer to an already complex geopolitical moment. Iran maintains that its nuclear program remains peaceful, and that the United States launched an unprovoked military strike against protected infrastructure. The United States maintains that the strike targeted facilities linked to accelerated uranium enrichment that could potentially shorten Iran's path to nuclear weapons capability. Between those two positions lies a fragile balance of power that has shaped Middle Eastern security for decades. The confrontation surrounding Iran's nuclear program has long existed in the shadow world of covert operations, cyber attacks, sabotage, and diplomatic pressure. Direct missile strikes against nuclear infrastructure represent a far more visible and dangerous phase of that struggle. Analysts note that moments like this test the limits of deterrence, the delicate calculation each side makes about how far it can push before triggering a broader conflict. For now, military forces across the region remain on alert, diplomatic channels remain active, and intelligence agencies around the world are closely watching for signs of the next move, because the events unfolding around Iran's nuclear facilities may not end with a single night of missile strikes. Will this strike remain an isolated incident, or is it the beginning of something far larger? Stay tuned for further updates as this situation continues to develop. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the latest dramatic geopolitical developments shaping the world.